Hi folks, Brother Peter with tidbits from the Word. Normally I'm doing basically all Bible stuff. Well, do you know what? To just be happy in this world is a good thing. To see what's around you. I'm reading behind a writer, The Small Blessings of Celestine Sibley. She is a pronounced writer. I'm telling you, her stuff is good. If you want to just sit back and have a pleasant day or a pleasant time, and just take out this little book right here. It's Small Blessings right here by this lady, and just read one chapter a day. Yes, I think it's important to read a chapter of your Bible a day. Yes, I think it's important to do a lot of things each day. But there are people who draw the best out of you, who draw out of you what you need. The younger you are when you read this, the longer you can live in some of the things this lady's talking about. Well, our problem is I'm 76, and I've waited until I was in my late 60s, early 70s, before I really started getting into books. One of my problems is I'm a dyslexic speller, and I couldn't read good. But I'm learning how to read at 76. I hope God will give me 10 more years to be 86, and during that period of time, read 100 more books, as well as read and studying the Bible and doing those things. But find good, wholesome writing. This lady is one of the best. You pick it up and you get in a chapter, you're not going to put it back down. You're going to stay in it. I want to read one of the chapters out of her little book right here, where she talks about small blessings. Do you know that every breath you take is a small blessing? Did you know that every bird you see is a small blessing? Did you know that every flower you see is a small blessing? Are we aware of what's around us? This is what she's writing here. Are you aware? Wake up and smell the roses. I love the things that this lady has done, how she has wrote. Look her books up and buy some of them. You may have to get some of the older ones through the internet secondhand, but you can find them. And she wrote many. But look, a few years ago, she said, in many countries still had what they frankly and unabashedly called almshouses. And they weren't bashful about it. Instead of places known as Happy Heart Haven and Sunset Manor, I became friends with an old man who may have been the richest person I ever to inhabit a poorhouse. Do you know you don't have to have money to be rich? You can have a good attitude. You can be rich. Do you speak to everybody? Do you speak to everybody, or do you just single out and say, well, I'm going to speak to this one or that one or that one? Do you speak to everybody? You nod your head when you're walking by. When you go to the grocery store, do you have a conversation with those around you? Or do you just maul around solemn? You need to be aware of those moments that can be so precious. I was out yesterday tromping around town. I'm in home hospice at home here, and so I don't get out but a couple times a week. Maybe I get out on a Sunday morning for about 5 hours, and I get out on Tuesday morning for about 5 hours. So I don't get out of the house much anymore. So therefore, I make the best of it. And I meet and talk to everybody I can talk to, and anybody that carry on a little conversation and cheer their day up a little bit too. It's amazing today how we walk by each other and don't emphatically recognize each other. And so we need to do that. and to know happy hearts that are found in these sunset manners. There are some there. I go to nursing homes, and here's a little lady sitting there. She's been sitting there for hours. People have walked by, not nodded, not said good morning, not said good day, not said how are you today, not sat down and talked 15, 20 minutes. Gave her a little one-on-one attention. This is the kind of writing this lady does. She does the kind of writing that you can see. We need to do that. We need to do. She's actually teaching us, if we read her stories, that this is a one-on-one world, and a world that everybody around us needs somebody else to recognize them and talk with them. Be rich or poor, it matters not. We have that instillment in us that we need. Now, let's go to Sunset Manor. It said, I became friends with this old man who may have been the richest ever inhabited a poorhouse. He had absolutely no possessions. There's something I have learned over the years. Possessions is not what makes you happy. Except a rusty old suit, grayish food, and the grayish dormitory bed that the county gave him. And yet he glowed with happiness. He wasn't, as you might suppose, a mental case, unaware of his surroundings. In his situation in life, on the contrary, he was the most aware person I ever saw. And in his younger days, he had been a successful lawyer. Now, you know, when you get talking with people, you find out something about them. I mean, you might be talking to a prince or a king or whatever. We went in 73, we went to Jerusalem, 69, whatever it was, sometime back in that area. We went to Jerusalem, we went to Jordan. I met King Hussein. And I talked to him just like I'm talking to you, a regular person. And he took a calendar off the wall and handed it to me. Said, here, gave me a gift. And so if we're sociable and friendly, show ourselves friendly. Hey, but his wife had died and he took to drink. And a series of miserable circumstances had resulted in his being disbarred. He lost his profession, his home, and he had no money. And by the time the county welfare worker found him, he was weakened to starvation and near death with pneumonia. Although he was severely in years old, apparently had no reason to make the effort to live. He railed and recovered. Hey, you're listening to a man that's learned how to read late in life. One of my problems when I come to a word, half of it's on the one line up here and the other half's on the line down here. To put the two things together sometimes causes me a little bit of a problem. And because I can't spell, I spell dyslexically, I have a little problem with ciphering out some words. It said when I knew him, he was a jaunty little fellow who walked miles in the nearby park every day. He spent hours watching birds and had not missed a sunrise for 10 years. Do you know that I know people that have never seen a sunrise? Think about it. I was born in the state of Maine. And to get up in the morning in Maine to the sunrise was something else. Oh, I mean, it was just absolutely pristine, and the air was always good, and you could breathe it. Man, I tell you, and it's just the birds chirping, and the deer was still crossing the meadow, and all of the things around us, and especially in snow time when the pheasants were out and the ermines were running across the snow and all of the good stuff. Just being aware. Just being aware. I believe this lady, Miss Sibley here, brings awareness to people. And like I say, this is a tribute to her. This is not for me. This is for her. This is a tribute to her. She's got many, many, many books. She's been writing for years. Get some of her stuff. Read it. And I used to visit him in sheer pleasure, in his company, and the luxury of being cheered up when things were not going well with me. He never failed me. He had the first speech of one who in his youth had been nurtured on the classics. And sometimes when he sat on a bench under the tree, he would pull his stately courtroom manner on me. He said, "If you please, Your Honor," he would sometimes begin, and he often prefaced a statement with the summit to you. Sometimes he left me puzzled and unsure of his exact meaning, but I usually had a feeling about what he was telling me, and frequently it would come clear later. Isn't it nice to meet somebody and muse on what they say and muse on what they wrote and think about it later? I love reading a book that said in the front of it, right here, that I don't mind if you copy this book. I don't mind if you repeat this book. You have permission to repeat it, to reprint it, to do things. Hey, that's the best thing I ever saw. I hate it when it says you'll be punished if you reprint what I wrote. I think it's good to say you can repeat and you can reprint if you want to do what I wrote. And this is good. So let's look. There was a day interrupted a story he was telling me about internal skirmish among inmates of an Amber's house to stare out across the field and cry, to know. That is a sum total of discovery. Read your Plato, madam. He's telling her. Look, stare out across that field. Look at it. What do you see? Are you so familiar with it you don't see it? It's just a field? No, it's not just a field. It has a tree in it with birds in it. It has grass with rabbits in it. It has stalks of grain and wheat and grass that has seeds on the top of it. What do you see? Are you seeing what you're looking at? I love this. I think this sums up a discovery that you and I can know. This simple little story. This is a simple little story of two people talking together, getting to know each other, going out daily and striking up a conversation with somebody, giving a man or a woman a little bit of your time. Listen to their conversation. Let them talk. There is nothing more better for the inside person for somebody to listen to them. Do you know they might not have much to say, but if you listen to them, you can glean a lot from what they say, especially if they're an older person. It may sound like gobbledygook to you, but when you get thinking about it later, it really is something. Being ambitiously, literally minded, I asked, what to know what? The subject of knowledge, he said, implicitly. It is to know, to see, to feel, to understand. That's what knowing is, to know. Another day, he came down from the Amber's house steps and greeted me, swinging his cane, she says, as if he didn't need it to lean on. When he reached me, he searched my face intently and said, Are you happy? What a question. Are you happy? Reading this book, are you reading it for yourself? Are you getting the gist of the thing? This is not just writing what the man said. This is a question to you and to me. When you read behind somebody, do you get the feeling that you're in the picture? That the question that he asked this lady, are you happy, is a question you ask yourself. Are you happy? If you are, why are you happy? And if you aren't, why aren't you happy? The problem all comes back home. You can look in the mirror and find the answer to your question. The mirror of life. You get up in the morning, you do these things. Are they mundane? Do you pull up to a drive-in window and get a cup of coffee? Are you pleasant to the girl in there? Do you get a cup of coffee and then every once in a while just say, hey, look, let me give you a little tip. I know you don't make much money in there. And here's a little, I use tracts myself. I use little tracts that say, if you died right now, would you go to heaven? I use these and I put $1 in them. A lot of times, if I'm going by and get a drink or a cup of coffee, I might complain about the price of the coffee, but I don't complain about the $1 I give them for a little tip. But this is it. Well, I began playing for time. It wasn't an instant answer for her, and it should have been. So he stalked ahead of me to the bench under the tree, sat down, and directed. He directed. And think, what do you have to be happy about? I can tell you one thing. You just walked out there in the park and you walked out and sat on a bench. You got one thing to be happy about. First thing is you can see. Second thing is you can walk. Second thing is you can sit on a bench and talk with another person and have a happy moment. And you can breathe air that God gave you. If you ever thought about air, where it comes from, the trees, how God made man, and then he made the trees to make air, so that the air that man breathes is just exactly right to keep his body healthy. Think about these things. For some time, I had been thinking what I had to be unhappy about, and I was not so facial with the exercise in the reverse. But quickly, I went over in my mind the things that I had automatically considered sources of happiness, although at the time they were a plague and and a pestilence. My children, if only they would behave themselves. My parents, or old house, which nagged me with its need for paint and repairs. When I had enumerated them to myself, I started to think, I started to tick them off to him. And never mind, he said impromptu, I don't need to know, you need to know. Don't tell me. Don't tell me your problems. Don't tell me your good things. I'm not the one that needs to know them. You're the one that needs to know them. If you know them, then you can be happy yourself. If you know why you're happy, what makes you happy, and what it is, then you know it yourself. I love this reading. I'm reading it in second person. But in second person, it's for me. To enjoy a book. To enjoy a book. Isn't this funny? I'm a man with an 8th grade education. The Lord allowed me to go to a Christian college and get a certificate and in Bible, and that was good. And so, but here I am reading books. I'm the most impromptu person that you ever saw that would ever read a book. Anybody would ever thought, Peter reading a book? You believe Peter can read a book? Yeah, he can read a book. And I can read it in the second person. I can read it as it's written for me to eat it up. Don't just read a book, eat the book. Don't just read a book, understand the book. If you don't understand a sentence you read it again. And if you don't understand then, read it again. Put a check mark in your book. I write all over my books. And say, I'm coming back here and I'm going to read that again. And then he told me why. The greatest waste in life, he said, is not to know when you are happy. Not to store up good fortune and rejoice in it when you have it, but to wait until the end of life and look back in surprise and say, I was happy then. Have you ever done that? I've done that. I look back and say, why am I not happy now? If I was happy then, why didn't I bring that happiness on a daily basis? Just like I walk across the street. Happiness is a walk of life. Frowning is not a pleasant thing. Smiling is a pleasant thing. I don't want wrinkles in my forehead from frowning. I want to be a happy person. I want to walk up to somebody, be happy, be positive. I can walk up and talk to anybody. I don't care who they are. It can be an ugly man, and I've talked to some ugly men, but I left them with a nice thought. Why didn't I know it? If only know. The direct no. K-N-O-W, no. Otherwise, it is all a waste. Presently, we talked of other things, and when I left, he was chuckling, checking a crepe myrtle tree at the edge of the yard that had some birds in it, a couple of nesting brown thrushes. A week later, he died while taking one of his long walks through the park. He had insisted on going out in the midst of a thunderstorm, although the superintendent had tried to keep him in. I couldn't feel sorry for that. Even as the aggrieved superintendent told me about it, because it did seem to me that in his way he had taken his friend Plato's advice. Let me tell you something. Isn't it nice to meet a positive person? Isn't it nice to read the words of a positive writer that mince the words properly, mix them up like making a good batch of biscuits, and then put them in the oven, and they rise about that high with a little brown crust on the top. And they call them cat heads. These are cat head book. This woman, Celestine Sibley, she writes cat head books. These are good. She writes good stuff you like to read. He had illuminated the swans, which having sung all their lives, when they came to die, do then sing more lustrily than ever. His daily walk was his own special kind of singing. In the years since that day, under the tree at the Amber's house, at last time I saw my old friend. I have thought often of his advice, and honest of his newness, of happiness is not easy come by. It takes practice. When my children were small, they called it listening thankfulness to their thankfuls. There are plenty of trouble in life, and I am not sure what to do about them. But I think one way of keeping them in perspective is to know when we hold happiness in our hands and to get the maximum pleasure and the satisfaction out of that. There will be times when, as the old hymn has said it, life's dark maze I tread, and grief around me I spread. Unfortunately, it doesn't take much practice to feel pain, but you have to look sharp. You have to pay attention to catch small, quiet, often fleeting blessings and know them for what they are. Do you know what's kind of what we see right here, what she's writing here? The dark maze and the griefs of life do not have to be dark mazes and griefs of life. Especially because I'm a believer. I believe that people either die and go to heaven or they die and go to hell. And especially if somebody, my wife's sitting here, we sit and talk with each other. We actually have a conversation. I say, baby, you know the Lord said he's building me a mansion in heaven. If you get there before me, I want you to occupy it. So when I get there, you'll be there already. You'll be in there, have it cleaned up, have it nice, have it ready. Like it's always been on this earth. 56 years we've been married and we've had this wonderful life together. I want to have that life forever with her, and I'm going to. So this book is really a kind of memo to myself, she says. A reminder of minor or maybe or major goodnesses in life. And I would be immeasurably enriched if it should serve to steer one other person toward what my old friend in the Anders house practiced daily, an exercise of awareness. Be aware of those around you. Be aware of those that need a word. Everybody needs a little word. Everybody needs you to come by every now and then, say a little word, nod your head. Don't just walk by people like they're not there. You're missing out for your own self. Well, I got about 3 minutes here. Did you know that God created us in his own image? It said God formed man out of the ground, the dust of the earth, and breathed in his nostrils a breath of life. And man became a living soul. I was fearfully and wonderfully made by God. Laid down by the river Euphrates. Just a dead body laying there. And God bent down from heaven and breathed in the nostrils of that body and made it a living soul, put a soul in it. What is the soul? The soul is what lives on forever. But this body carries that soul around. Are you carrying a happy soul? Or are you carrying one that complains and gripes and, well, it's raining today. Well, good. Get up and walk out in the rain and say, thank you, Lord, for this rain. If we didn't have this rain, we wouldn't have these flowers. If we didn't have this rain, we wouldn't have this food. If we didn't have this rain, we wouldn't have these beautiful trees. See, look, there's good in what we consider a drawback for us. It's important. God said, let us make man in our own image, after our likeness, and let him have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the fowls of the air, over the cattle, over the earth, over every creeping thing that creepeth on the earth. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he, male and female. How about that? He didn't leave man alone. He made him a helpmate. And then the first man in the earth was earthly. The second man was the Lord from heaven. As it is earthly, such are they also that are earthly. And as it is heavenly, such are they which are heavenly. So originally man came from heaven, and man's going back to heaven. If he said, Jesus, I am a sinner, forgive me of my sin, come into my heart and save my soul, he's going to heaven. Wow. And as we were born in the image of the earthly, we shall also bear the image of the heavenly. Now this I say, brethren, that the flesh and blood cannot inherit the kingdom of God, neither does corruption inherit uncorruption. But listen to this. This is the book of the generations of Adam. In the day that God created man, in the likeness of God created him, male and female created he them. Blessed in them, and they shall call the name Adam. In the day when they were created, they were called Adam. God took that rib out. As for me, I'll behold thy face in righteousness. I shall be satisfied when I awake in thy likeness. Wee. One of these days, I'm going to lay this body down and awake in the likeness of God with him. Well, our time's come and gone. I wished I had more time to do this. Thou madest him have dominion over the works of thy hands, and hast put all things under his feet. Listen, God loved man enough to give him eternal life. Wow. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Brother Peter with tidbits from the Word.